Hi! This instructional video is about circles, graphing circles. Now, for this to work, we're going to assume that the center of a circle is always at the origin of the coordinate plane. And in order to graph, you have to understand the standard form of the circle, which is given as x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared, where the r is the radius. So for example, if we're given an equation as x squared plus y squared is equal to, let's say, 9, no, 9 is not the radius. You have to write the 9 in the exponential form. So since r squared is 9 right now, to make it into an r, you have to square root both sides, and as a result, now r becomes 3. Or if you like, you could write this as x squared plus y squared is equal to 3 squared, which is now more recognizable as a radius. So on number 1, when we're about to graph this standard form, x squared plus y squared equals 49, we have to understand the fact that since the standard form is x squared plus y squared equals r squared here is 49, therefore the radius is the square root of 49, which is simply 7. And how do you graph that? Check this out. All you do is simply draw the coordinate plane and indicate that, boom, right there. That's the coordinate x and y, which is at 7 and 0. And if that's a radius, then it's the same this way. And the coordinate for this side should be negative 7 and 0. And over here, the y should be negative 7. And over there, the y should be positive 7. And therefore, when I draw the circle, it should intersect all those points. And the distance around it is not to scale, of course, are all 7s. The radius from the center of 0, 0 to any point on the circumference of a circle is the radius. And r is the 7. So how do you graph number 4? Actually, we're going to go up and down. So in this case, since r squared is 25, the radius is just the square root of that, which is 5. And therefore, all you need to do is simply say, here's another way to do it. From the origin, the radius, the distance, is 5. Therefore, it's the same all the way around. And that's another way to indicate the graph. And your teacher should not mind this. How about when you have a coefficient other than a 1? Well, you still have to make it into a standard form. X squared plus y squared equals r squared. So we have to get rid of that 8 somehow. And to do that, in this case, we could multiply to all the terms of this equation by the reciprocal of the coefficient, which is 1 over 8. So when you do the distributive property, here the 8 cancels out to become x squared. 8 cancels from that coefficient, which is now y squared. And 8 goes into 192. Let's say 2 times 8 is 16, 32, and 4. So it's 24. Now we have a problem. 24 is not a perfect square. So you know you're going to end up with a radical. So since r squared is 24, when you square root both sides of the equation to solve for r becomes, well, square root of 24 is like saying 4 times 6. So the square root of 4 comes out as a 2 coefficient, and the 6 stays inside as a radicand. So radius is 2 square root of 6. Now if you're saying, how do you indicate that? No sweat. Check this out. From the center, the origin, to the point of a circumference of a circle, that radius is 2 square root of 6. And that's all you need to do. That is all you need to do. Okay? So this one. If you said, all right, multiply the reciprocal 1/5, or just simply divide 5 to all the terms of this equation, so it becomes x squared equals y squared. And that becomes, I believe, what, 16? And this time, oops, that's a plus. And this time, that is a perfect square. So our radius is 4. Are you seeing the pattern now? So if they ask for the coordinate, you'll say 4 and 0, negative 4 and 0, 0 and negative 4, and 0 and positive 4. Now, what if you have a quotient? Once again, the reciprocal of the 3 over 8 coefficient is 8 over 3. And when you do the distributive property, these simplify out. So it becomes x squared plus y squared. And on the last term, the 3 reduces to 6 twice. 2 times 8 is 16. And once again, we end up with the radius of square root of 16 is 4. If you're saying it's getting boring, oh, same old, it is. Let's make it a little fancy this way now. And the radius for that one is 4. So it looks something like this. And this one? What would you multiply to all terms? Yeah, the 4. So this reader property, this will become x squared plus y squared. And 4 times 16 is 64. Is that the radius? It's the square root of that. Therefore, it's going to be 8. And therefore, once again, when you draw the circle, just simply say the distance from the center to the point of a circumference, that distance is the radius indicated by 8. There you go. Okay, so we know how to recognize the radius and graph the circle given the standard form, x squared plus y squared equals r squared. So now how about we kind of go the other way? How about if we're given just the radius? Can you still write the standard form? And even though it doesn't say on the instruction, can we also circle it or draw the circle? So number one, let me do the easy one. And you could try the more difficult ones, 2 and 3. The radius is 6. So the standard form is x squared plus y squared equals r squared. Since I know that the radius is 6, all I have to do is just put that 6 in here. So it will look like x squared plus y squared equals 6 squared. Okay? But usually you don't want to leave a term like that. You want to evaluate. You want to multiply. So it becomes x squared plus y squared equals 6 times 6 is 36. Now that becomes a standard form. Now, how do you graph that? Easy. But be careful. Remember, 36 is not the radius. It's the square root of it. So the way I would do it is simply say, here is the radius. Radius is r equals 6. And that distance to the circumference of a point is the full circle. There it is. And if they insist, you could also say, and the coordinate for one of the points at the x-axis is 6 and 0. Then this must be negative 6 and 0. Then this must be 0 and negative 6. And vice versa right there. Okay? Now you try number 2 and 3. Alright. So you said, alright, if I'm given the radius, my standard form is x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared. Since the r is square root of 11, even though it looks kind of funky, all I have to do is just substitute it in and evaluate. So you get square root of 11, the whole term squared. But we know when we're solving equations, when we dealt with radicals, square of a square root, the radicand 11 comes out. And right there is a standard form. Now, is that the radius? Remember, radius is square root of 11. And what number comes, what are the whole numbers square root of 11 falls into? Well, let's see. Square root of 9 is 3. And square root of 16 is 4. So it must be 11 is something like 3 point something. And since it's 3 point something, I'm going to do this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then 3 point something is over here somewhere. And this is the lazy bum way of doing it. But it works. And here's the way I will indicate it. The radius here is square root of 11. Ta-da! and this one? Again, x squared plus y squared equals r squared. Once again, the r is given as 2 square root of 7. All you have to do is substitute it in. And evaluate. It's quite arithmetic here. So we get 2 square root of 7, the entire expression squared. Now, you have to use the rules of exponent here to evaluate. The exponent 2 is applied to the coefficient 2 and the radical. So 2 squared is 4. Square of a square root 7, the radicand 7 comes out. And when you evaluate that, of course, x squared plus y squared is equal to 28. And is the 28 and is 28 the radius? No, the radius is 2 square root of 7. So if you have to approximate what is 2 square root of 7, remember 3 times square root of 9 is 3. And square root of 4 is 2. So since square root of 7 comes in between those two radicals, it must be 2 point something. And 2 point something times the coefficient 2 must be 4 point something. Okay? So the radius is approximately 4 point something. And how do we graph that over here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's 5. 4 point something is, there it is. I kind of made a mess out of it. And the radius is 4, or let's just put that the original, 2 point square root of 7. And there it is. And here, when you're given a coordinate, this coordinate is a point on the circumference of a circle. The circle whose center is the origin. So here's how we will do this. Let me go ahead and draw the graph so we get a better picture of what's going on. The coordinate is 0, negative 10. So the 0 and 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. 0 and negative 10. And that is a point on the circumference. Well, it turns out that also happens to be the radius. Radius is 10. Okay? So if it's radius this way from the origin to that circumference, it must also be true this way. So it must be 10 and 0 here. Then it must be 0 and 10 here. And it must be negative 10 and 0 here. So here's how we would draw the circle if we had to. And how do you write the equation? Well, the standard form is x squared plus y squared equals radius squared. And radius is 10. And since radius is 10, you put 10 inside. 10 squared simply becomes 100. That's the standard form. All right. Now, how about these two? Can you figure those out? If you were stumped, I don't blame you. Because here's the situation. If I were to plot that on a graph this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, that is the point on the circumference. And so the radius is the distance from the origin to that circumference, a point of a circle. So if you think about it, however, when you draw the circle going around it, you could see that it's not going to be 7 over here on the x-axis like it was over here. So how do you find this? Well, this radius happens to be a distance. It's a segment between these 2 points. And you know what this coordinate is? It's 7 and negative 4. And what is this coordinate? Yeah, it's the origin. So it's 0 and 0. So how do you find the distance, the radius? We have to use a thing called distance formula. And since this distance is the radius from the center to the circumference point, we're going to say instead of d, distance formula, we're going to call it r. But the computation is the same. It's the square root of the difference of 2 x coordinates squared plus the difference of y's. Remember the classic distance formula that you may have learned in pre-algebra? Here's where we're using it. So when you plug it in, life is so simple. Remember, the first coordinate is 7 and negative 4, but the second is 0 and 0. So that's 0 and 0. It's easy. So x is 7 squared plus the y is negative 4 squared, and whatever you get is a square root. So you get 49. Negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. So square root of 49 plus 16 is square root of 60, what is that, 5? And 65 is a product of 5 and 13, I guess. And that doesn't simplify any further. So the radius is square root of 65. Now, how do you write that in standard form? X squared plus y squared equals r squared. And so since if you put that in here, square root of 65 squared is simply 65. So x squared plus y squared equals 65 becomes a standard form. And finally, this coordinate, draw the picture again. This time it's going to be on the first quadrant. So let me do it this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here is the point on the circumference of a circle. And since the circumference, the radius is from there to the origin. And the circle would look something like this. This is 5 and 8. How do you find the radius? The radius is the distance from the origin to the point of circumference. So once again, the distance formula. So r equals square root of, and we know since the second coordinate is 0 and 0, don't even bother writing this down. Just simply go x squared plus y squared. And this is only true if they indicate the origin is the center. The origin could be somewhere else sometimes. So in this case, we got 5 squared plus 8 squared. So radius equals the sum of square root of the sum 25 plus 64. 25 plus 64, I believe, is what? 89? Is that a perfect square? No, it's not. And since when we put it back into a standard form, x squared plus y squared equals 65. I'm sorry, I'm copying this guy. R squared. And you know square of a square root, the radicand comes out. We could just say x squared plus y squared is equal to 89. Time to wash our hands and go home. There it is.